The morning light filtered through the high windows of the Grand Training Hall, casting elongated shadows across the polished titanium floor. Dust particles danced in the beams of light, giving the enormous chamber an almost ethereal quality. Cadet Aziri blinked her inner eyelids rapidly, a nervous habit she had developed during her first week at the Galactic Council Military Academy. 200 cadets from 37 different species stood at attention, arranged in perfect rows according to height and respiratory requirements. The air was still and oppressive, laden with the mingled scents of various biological entities trying desperately not to show fear. Aziri shifted her weight slightly, careful not to make any noise that might draw attention. As an Evian, she was blessed with exceptional peripheral vision, allowing her to survey the room while maintaining the rigid forward gaze demanded by military protocol. 3 rows ahead of her stood a human female, one of only 7 humans in this year's intake. What had the orientation officer called her? Emma. That was it. Humans were relatively new to the Galactic Council, having been granted provisional membership only 11 standard cycles ago. Their integration into the military structure was still considered an experiment by many of the elder species. Aziri had heard stories about humans, their unpredictability, their emotional volatility, their strange obsession with creating artificial intelligence despite the obvious existential risks. But this particular human Emma seemed different from the stereotypes. She stood perfectly still, her posture impeccable, her breathing controlled. Not even the tip of her short dark hair moved when the ventilation system cycled. What caught Aziri's attention, however, was not the human's discipline, but the thin raised scar that ran from her left temple down to the corner of her jaw. It was a battle scar unmistakably, and that was a problem. The massive doors at the far end of the chamber hissed open, and a hush fell over the already silent cadets. General Drozier strode in his forelegs, clicking against the floor with mechanical precision. The Zodar general was a legend. Within the Galactic Council military, 5 campaigns against the Valaxian Horde, 3 against the Quantum Pirates, and the famous last stand at Cygnus X1. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lights, polished to a mirror finish that reflected the terror in the eyes of the first-row cadets. "Stand at attention," barked Commander Vexa Sonori with a voice that could cut through steel. Not a single cadet moved. They were already at attention, had been for the past 30 minutes, but such was military tradition. General Drossier's compound eyes swept across the rows of new recruits, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "At ease," he said finally. His voice surprisingly soft for a being of his size and reputation. 200 cadets simultaneously adjusted their stance, feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind their backs. The synchronized movement created a brief whoosh of air that stirred the dust motes into new patterns. "Welcome to the Galactic Council United Forces." Drozier continued pacing slowly before the front row. "You represent the finest your species have to offer, selected from millions of applicants across 37 worlds. Some of you are here because of your physical prowess." He paused before a towering Uramite, whose shoulders nearly touched the ceiling 15 meters above. "Some for your intellectual capabilities." A nod to a cluster of Zephian cadets, their translucent skulls pulsing with neural activity. "Others for your specialized adaptations." Here his gaze lingered on a Morvan cadet, whose skin rippled with chromatophores, currently matching the gray of the floor in a subconscious attempt to blend in. "But all of you," Drozier's voice hardened, "are here to serve, to protect, to uphold the peace that has cost billions of lives across countless star systems." Aziri felt a familiar swell of pride. This was why she had left her homeworld, why she had endured the rigorous selection process, why she stood here now among the best warriors in the galaxy. To serve something greater than herself, greater than her species. To be part of the force that maintained order in a chaotic universe. "Today marks the beginning of your formal training," Drozier continued. "For the next 3 standard years, You will be pushed beyond what you believe are your limits. You will fail. You will suffer. You will question your decision to join. And those who persevere will emerge as officers worthy of the uniform. The general paused before Emma, his head tilting slightly as he noticed the scar on her face. Aziri's stomach tightened. This was exactly what she had feared. Cadet Drozier addressed the human directly. "What is your designation?" "Cadet Emma Lopez, sir." The human responded crisply, her voice steady despite the intimidating presence looming over her. "And how did you acquire that marking, Cadet Lopez?" Emma's face remained impassive. "Combat training accident on Earth, sir." Drozier's mandibles twitched, the Zodar equivalent of a smile. "Impressive that you survived with such minimal damage." He moved on, but Aziri had seen enough. The way he looked at the human, the slight change in his pheromone output, detectable only to species with enhanced olfactory senses like Ivians, it confirmed what she had heard in whispered warnings from senior cadets. General Drozier had a fascination with scarred female warriors, and not simply an academic interest. The rest of the inspection passed without incident. Drozier completed his circuit of the assembled cadets, occasionally stopping to ask a question or make an observation. When he finally departed, Commander Vex issued a series of instructions regarding schedules, quarters assignments, and the location of species-specific sanitation facilities before dismissing the company. As the cadets filed out in orderly columns, Aziri made a decision. It was against protocol. It violated the unspoken rule of non-interference in superior officer matters. It could potentially end her military career before it began. But she couldn't remain silent. She maneuvered through the crowd, careful to maintain the appearance of simply following the flow of bodies. When she was close enough to the human, she spoke in a low voice that wouldn't carry beyond immediate hearing range. "Cadet Lopez, a word." Emma glanced at her, surprise evident in her expression. Interactions between different species were not forbidden, but they were uncommon during the early stages of training when cadets typically clustered with their own kind for comfort and familiarity. "Yes," Emma responded, matching Aziri's hushed tone. "Not here," Aziri whispered. "Section 12 sanitation room, 10 minutes. Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, but she gave an almost imperceptible nod before continuing toward the exit. Aziri followed a different path, taking care not to be seen heading in the same direction as the human. The Section 12 sanitation room was a sterile white-walled chamber designed to accommodate multiple species hygiene needs. At this hour, with most cadets heading to their assigned quarters or the nutrition center, it would be empty. Aziri arrived first, her heart pounding against her ribcage in a way that would have concerned her health monitoring implant had she not temporarily disabled it, another violation of regulations. Emma entered exactly 8 minutes later, her movements cautious but not overtly suspicious. She had clearly received some training in covert meetings. "Cadet." Emma paused, realizing she didn't know the Ivian's name. "Aziri, House of Vashlan, third lineage." "That's quite a name." "Just Aziri will suffice," she said, then checked the doorway one final time before continuing. "Listen carefully, Cadet Lopez. What I'm about to tell you violates at least 7 different protocols, but I believe it's important for your safety." Emma's posture shifted subtly, becoming more alert. "I'm listening." "General Drozier noticed your scar." Aziri kept her voice low. "That might not seem significant to you, but among the senior cadets, there are stories." "What kind of stories?" Emma's voice remained neutral, but Aziri noticed the slight dilation of her pupils, a human stress response. "The general has what my species would call a collection interest in female warriors with battle scars." Aziri's inner eyelids flicked nervously. "He has been known to summon such individuals to private meetings. These meetings are not of a professional nature." Emma's expression darkened. "Sexual harassment." Aziri wasn't familiar with the human term, but understood the concept. "Yes, and there are no official channels for complaints." His rank and reputation make him essentially untouchable. Has he been violent? Not physically from what I've heard, but refusing his attentions can have consequences for one's career progression. Emma was silent for a moment, processing the information. Thank you for the warning, but why risk telling me this? We've never even spoken before today. Aziri hesitated. The question struck at something fundamental that she herself didn't fully understand. I believe in the principles of the Galactic Council Military Honor Protection Justice. What he does violates those principles. And, she paused, searching for the right words, among my people, we have a saying, the strongest branch reaches toward the weakest. Emma's eyebrows rose slightly. You think I'm weak? No, Aziri replied quickly. It's an idiom that loses meaning in translation. It refers to the responsibility of the privileged to protect those with less advantage. I have connections, family in the diplomatic corps. If Drogier targeted me, there might be consequences for him. You are human, your species is new to the council. You have fewer protections. Understanding dawned in Emma's eyes. I see. Well, I appreciate the warning, though I'm capable of handling myself. I believe you are, Aziri agreed, noting the human's confident bearing. But information is armor. Now you're prepared. What should I do if he calls for me? There's no perfect solution. Some cadets have found that appearing less attractive can help. Disrupting your grooming patterns affecting illness? Others have managed to always be in groups when he's present. Emma nodded thoughtfully. And you? Has he noticed you? Aziri's second eyelids flickered in what humans might interpret as a blink. I've taken precautions. Evian females typically maintain elaborate scale patterns for social display. I've been deliberately neglecting mine. Emma studied the Ivian's dull, somewhat unkempt scales. That explains a lot. I thought perhaps your species just had a different aesthetic standard than what I'm used to. Our aesthetic standard is perhaps the closest to humans among council species, Aziri replied. My appearance would be considered quite unappealing by Evian standards. A small smile touched Emma's lips, the first Aziri had seen from her. A sacrifice for safety. I understand completely. The human extended her hand, another gesture Aziri recognized from cultural integration briefings. Thank you, Cadet Aziri. I won't forget this. Aziri hesitated before taking the offered hand. Direct physical contact between different species was uncommon outside of medical or combat situations. The human's skin felt oddly smooth against her textured scales. We should leave separately, Aziri said, releasing Emma's hand. The chrono display shows we have exactly 12 minutes before the evening nutrition cycle begins. Emma nodded. I'll go first. See you in formation tomorrow. After the human departed, Aziri waited the prescribed 4 minutes before exiting the sanitation room herself. As she made her way to the nutrition center, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake or done something genuinely noble. The distinction she was beginning to realize wasn't always clear in real life as it was in the ethics simulations back home. The following weeks fell into a grueling routine. Dawn awakenings, physical conditioning, tailored to each species' capabilities, tactical simulations, weapons training, zero-gravity maneuvers, and endless hours of Galactic Council law and protocol studies. Aziri saw Emma occasionally during cross-species integration exercises, but they maintained a professional distance, acknowledging each other with nothing more than a brief nod when their paths crossed. Then came the day that Aziri had been dreading. Attention all cadets! Commander Vex's voice boomed over the communal mess hall's announcement system during the midday nutrition period. General Drogier will be conducting individual assessment interviews beginning at 1400 hours. Report to Interview Chamber 7 when your designation is called. A collective tension descended over the hall. Individual assessments were not scheduled until the end of the first training quarter. This was unexpected, unprecedented, and to those who knew the rumors deeply concerning. The first name called was Cadet Thrix, a Valorian female known for her exceptional marksmanship and the distinctive burn scars that covered the left side of her face, souvenirs from a mining accident on her homeworld. She returned 40 minutes later, her normally violet skin pale and her 4 hands trembling slightly as she collected her belongings and left the training area without speaking to anyone. The second was Cadet Orlin, a Makisian, whose regenerative abilities had left intricate scar patterns across her exoskeleton after a childhood encounter with a predatory species. She did not return to the common areas at all. The third name called sent a chill through Aziri's spine. Cadet Emma Lopez. Report to interview chamber 7 immediately. Across the mess hall, Emma stood slowly, her face a mask of calm determination. As she walked toward the exit, her eyes briefly met Aziri's. There was no fear there, only a cool assessment that somehow made Aziri more worried rather than less. 20 minutes passed, 30, 45. Aziri couldn't focus on her tactical simulation assignment. Her instructor, a veteran Tholian with little patience for distraction, reprimanded her twice before dismissing her from the class session with an order to recalibrate her attention parameters. Instead of returning to her quarters as instructed, Aziri found herself walking toward interview chamber 7. Drawn by a combination of concern and curiosity that overrode her typically strict adherence to protocol, she had almost reached the corridor leading to the interview chambers when the facility's alarm system erupted with a piercing wail. "Security alert, a medical emergency in interview chamber 7. An automated voice announced over the blaring alarms. "All personnel clear the area. Security response team to interview chamber 7 immediately." Aziri's hearts accelerated to dangerous speeds as she pressed herself against a wall, ostensibly complying with the order to clear the area, while actually positioning herself to observe the response. Within moments, a team of 6 security officers, all large weaponized species, sprinted past her position and into the restricted corridor. Minutes later, they emerged, escorting 2 figures, General Drozier, one of his upper limbs hanging at an unnatural angle, and Emma Lopez, her uniform disheveled, a fresh cut on her cheekbone, but walking under her own power with her head held high. Behind them came 2 more security officers leading a third figure. Aziri felt her blood run cold when she realized it was herself they were describing over their communication devices, Ivian Female 3rd Year Cadet Division, Section 5 Quarters. One of the officers spotted her before she could retreat. "Cadet Aziri of House Vashlan." She straightened to attention automatically. "Yes, officer?" "You will accompany us to detention immediately. You are hereby suspended from duty, pending investigation into violation of Council Military Code, Sections 47, 112, and 389. Conspiracy, sedition, undermining command structure." The charges rang in Aziri's mind as the officers escorted her through corridors now lined with curious cadets and instructors. Her career was over. Her family's reputation would be tarnished. The shame would follow her lineage for generations. And yet, as she caught a glimpse of Emma being led down a different corridor, still standing proud despite the circumstances, Aziri couldn't bring herself to regret her actions. The detention cell was sparse, but not uncomfortable. Designed to accommodate various biological needs, it featured adjustable atmospheric controls, a simple waste reclamation unit, and a resting platform that could be configured for different physiologies. Aziri sat perfectly still, her back straight, hands folded in her lap in the traditional Evian posture of contemplation. 2 hours and 17 minutes passed, according to the chronometer embedded in the wall, the only indication of time in the windowless space. Then the door slid open to reveal not the security officer she had expected, but a tall, elegantly dressed Ivian male wearing the insignia of the diplomatic corps, Ambassador Amir Kavesh. Aziri whispered, immediately dropping to one knee in the formal greeting of a lower-ranked individual to a house patriarch. "Rise, Cadet Aziri," the ambassador said, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonics of the high northern provinces. "This is not a formal audience." She stood, confusion evident in her expression. Ambassador, I don't understand your presence here. This is a military disciplinary matter. It has become somewhat more than that. Ambassador Kavesh replied, adjusting the ceremonial drape that denoted his house status. The incident involving General Drozier has escalated to a diplomatic concern. Before Aziri could respond, another figure entered the cell, a human male in his 6th or 7th decade, judging by the gray in his hair and the lines around his eyes. He wore the distinctive blue and silver of the Earth Diplomatic Service. Ambassador Wayne, Kavesh said with a respectful incline of his head, may I present Cadet Aziri of House Fashlen 3rd Lineage. The human ambassador nodded to Aziri. Cadet, I understand we owe you a debt of gratitude. Aziri's confusion deepened. Sir, I'm afraid I don't understand what's happening. Ambassador Wayne exchanged a glance with Kavesh before responding. What's happening, Cadet, is that you've inadvertently become the catalyst for a significant diplomatic breakthrough between Earth and the Galactic Council. Perhaps we should explain from the beginning, Kavesh suggested, gesturing to the room's single seating platform. Please make yourselves comfortable. This may take some time. Aziri remained standing, as did both ambassadors, respecting the formality of the situation, despite Kavesh's earlier dismissal of protocol. 3 standard months ago, Kavesh began, the Galactic Council received intelligence suggesting a pattern of behavioral irregularities among certain high-ranking military officers toward cadets from newly integrated species. The Council was concerned, but without formal complaint or direct evidence, there was little that could be done within the established legal framework. Simultaneously, Ambassador Wayne continued, Earth's leadership was hearing troubling reports from our first waves of cadets about integration difficulties. Nothing specific, but enough to raise concerns about whether the military partnership aspect of our Provisional Council membership was viable long-term. Aziri's inner eyelids flicked rapidly as she processed the information. So, the Council and Earth were both aware of problems, but couldn't address them directly. Precisely, Kavesh said, which is why Captain Lopez was assigned to this infiltration mission. Captain Aziri repeated the pieces finally beginning to fall into place. Emma is not a cadet. Wayne smiled slightly. Captain Emma Lopez is one of Earth's most decorated special operations officers. Her mission was to integrate as a standard cadet and assess the environment firsthand, reporting directly to Earth Command rather than through Council channels. What we did not anticipate, Kavesh added, was that she would find an ally among the existing cadet population. Your warning to Captain Lopez provided the context she needed to understand that General Drozier's behavior was part of a pattern, not an isolated incident. When Drozier summoned her and subsequently made inappropriate advances, Wayne continued, she was prepared. The confrontation was regrettable but necessary. His assault on a diplomatic observer gives us the evidence needed to address these issues systemically rather than as isolated incidents. I still don't understand my role in this diplomatic breakthrough you mentioned, Aziri said cautiously. Kavesh's expression softened in the particular way that Ivian's reserved for younger clan members who showed promise. Your willingness to risk your own standing to protect someone you perceived as vulnerable, especially someone from a species and new to the Council, has been noted at the highest levels. It demonstrates exactly the kind of interspecies cooperation and ethical commitment that the Galactic Council was founded to foster. In practical terms, Wayne added, your actions have given Earth something we've been seeking since joining the Council, proof that integration is genuinely possible, that different species can look out for each other's interests rather than merely coexisting in separate hierarchies. The Council Security Directorate will be reviewing all of General Drozier's personnel interactions, Kavesh said. But more importantly, your actions have accelerated diplomatic discussions about moving Earth from provisional to full Council membership. Aziri stood in stunned silence, trying to reconcile the magnitude of these revelations with what she had believed was a simple act of conscience. What happens now? She finally asked. Now, Ambassador Wayne said with a smile, you are free to return to your training with a formal commendation added to your record rather than the disciplinary note you were expecting. And Captain Lopez has completed her mission and will be returning to Earth for debriefing, Wayne replied. However, she asked me to give you this. He extended his hand, holding a small metallic disc emblazoned with Earth's planetary insignia. It's a direct communication link. She expressed a desire to continue your cultural exchange when her duties permit. Aziri accepted the disc, carefully aware of the honor it represented. Thank you, Ambassador. Please convey my gratitude to Captain Lopez for this privilege. I believe she would say the privilege is hers, Wayne responded. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a rather fraught communication scheduled with the Council Judiciary Committee. With a final nod to both Aziri and Kavesh, he exited the detention cell. Kavesh remained studying Aziri with an evaluative gaze that reminded her uncomfortably of her childhood tutors. You have brought unexpected honor to your house, young one. Your parents have already been informed of your role in this matter. Aziri's scales flushed with warmth, the Ivian equivalent of a blush. I hope they are not disappointed by my breach of protocol. Quite the contrary, Kavesh assured her. Your mother expressed that your actions perfectly exemplified the third virtue of House Vashlan, courage in service of justice. Aziri recited automatically the ancient house motto embedded in her earliest memories. Indeed. Kavesh moved toward the door but paused before exiting. One final matter, Cadet. Upon completion of your training, the Diplomatic Corps would welcome an application from you should you decide that your talents might be better suited to preventing conflicts rather than fighting in them. With that, he was gone, leaving Aziri alone with thoughts that spun like a neutron star around a singularity of possibility she had never before considered. 3 days later, Aziri stood at attention in the Grand Training Hall, now wearing the silver pin of diplomatic commendation alongside her cadet insignia. The room was filled with the same 200 cadets, but the atmosphere could not have been more different. News of General Drozier's medical leave of absence and the pending investigation had spread throughout the facility, along with increasingly elaborate rumors about what had transpired in Interview Chamber 7. Commander Vex had been temporarily elevated to acting general, and it was she who addressed the assembled cadets. Now her normally stern Sonori features softened by what might have been interpreted as pride. Cadets of the Galactic Council. She began, her voice carrying the same authority but with a new note of warmth. Today, we reinforce the most fundamental principle of our united forces, that we stand together, not because we are the same, but because we are different. Each species brings unique strengths, perspectives, and values to our coalition. It is through honoring these differences, while upholding our shared ideals, that we create something greater than any single world could achieve alone. Her gaze swept across the assembly, lingering briefly on Aziri. Recent events have highlighted both challenges and opportunities in our integration efforts. I will speak plainly, the Council military has failed some of you. Systems that should protect all equally have instead protected some at the expense of others. This is changing effective immediately. A murmur passed through the ranks despite the strict discipline, the closest thing to an admission of institutional failure any of them had ever heard from command. New protocols for reporting inappropriate conduct have been implemented. Vex continued. Anonymous channels are now available through your personal datapads. All reports will be reviewed by a multi-species ethics committee independent of the regular chain of command. She paused, allowing the significance of the announcement to register. Furthermore, in recognition of the vital importance of cross-species understanding and cooperation, a new training module will be added to all cadet curricula: ethical leadership in diverse units. Another pause, this one carrying a different weight. Finally, it is my duty and privilege to recognize exceptional service. Cadet Aziri of House Vashlan front and center. Aziri moved forward with practiced precision, every scale on her body perfectly aligned in a display of formal avian presentation, that she had neglected during her month of strategic dishevelment. She stopped before Commander Vex and saluted in the Council's standard form. "Cadet Aziri." Vex said, her voice now carrying the formal tones of ceremonial recognition. "For exemplary courage, ethical commitment, beyond requirement, and actions that have materially strengthened the Galactic Council Alliance, you are hereby awarded the Commendation of Meritorious Service 3rd Class." A decorative band was affixed to Aziri's uniform sleeve, a simple gold thread that nevertheless represented one of the highest honors a cadet could receive. The commendation typically required years of distinguished service even for full officers. Furthermore, Vex continued, upon recommendation from the Diplomatic Corps, and with the endorsement of 3 member species ambassadors, you are granted the privilege of specialized cross-training between military and diplomatic services during your final year, should you choose to accept. Aziri's inner eyelids flickered rapidly in surprise, but her exterior remained composed. "I am honored beyond expression, Commander. I accept with gratitude." "Very good, Cadet. Return to your position." As Aziri stepped back into formation, her enhanced peripheral vision caught a movement at the rear entrance to the hall. Captain Emma Lopez stood there, in full Earth Defense Force dress uniform, the insignia of her rank clearly visible now. The scar on her face seemed somehow more pronounced against the formal attire, a badge of experience rather than a mark of violence. Emma nodded once to Aziri, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth, before turning and disappearing through the doorway. The connection between them, brief though it had been, had changed everything. For Aziri, for the human, perhaps in some small way for the future of the Galactic Council itself. As Commander Vex concluded the assembly and dismissed the cadets, Aziri felt the weight of the communication disc in her pocket. She would activate it soon, she decided. There was much she wished to learn about humans, about Earth, about the complex interplay of personal courage and institutional change. But more than that, she wanted to understand the particular human who had turned what could have been merely another abuse of power into an opportunity for growth and reconciliation. The woman who had, with a single brave act of defiance, possibly done more for Earth Council relations than a decade of formal diplomacy. The woman who, despite their brief acquaintance, had somehow seen in Aziri not just another alien cadet, but an ally worth trusting with the truth. As she filed out with the other cadets, Aziri realized that her understanding of service had been forever altered. It was not simply about following orders or upholding regulations. Sometimes the greatest service came from knowing when to break the rules in service of the principles those rules were meant to protect. It was a paradox her logical Ivian mind would have rejected before meeting Emma Lopez. Now it seemed like the most natural truth in the universe. 6 months later, Aziri stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Concordance, watching the blue-green sphere of Earth grow larger as they approached. As a cadet diplomat in training, she had been assigned to assist Ambassador Kavesh during this historic visit, the formal ceremony marking Earth's transition from provisional to full council membership. "Nervous?" asked a familiar voice behind her. Aziri turned to find Captain Emma Lopez leaning against the doorframe, now wearing the formal blue and gold of Earth's diplomatic security detail. The scar on her face had faded slightly, but remained a distinctive marker of her identity. "Ivians do not experience nervousness," Aziri replied with mock seriousness before allowing her inner eyelids to flutter in the expression humans had come to recognize as her version of a smile. "But yes, terribly." Emma laughed, a sound Aziri had come to appreciate during their regular communications over the past months. "You'll be fine. Your standard English is nearly perfect, and most humans find Ivian formal mannerisms charming." "Charming was not the mission parameter I was given," Aziri protested. "I am to provide cultural context and facilitate cross-species protocol adherence. Trust me," Emma said, moving to stand beside Aziri at the viewport. "A little charm goes a long way in diplomacy, sometimes more than all the formal protocols combined." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as Earth's continents became distinguishable through swirling cloud patterns. "Did you ever imagine this outcome?" Emma finally asked. "When you decided to warn me about Drosya?" Aziri considered the question seriously, as was her nature. "No. I expected at best to help one individual avoid harassment. At worst, to end my military career. The scale of what followed was beyond calculation. Small actions, big consequences," Emma mused. "There's an Earth saying the flap of a butterfly's wings can cause a hurricane on the other side of the world. An apt metaphor, though meteorologically questionable," Aziri observed. "But I find I prefer another Earth expression I encountered in my studies. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." Emma's eyebrows rose in pleasant surprise. "Martin Luther King Jr., you've been doing your homework." "Of course. Understanding human philosophical and historical context is essential for effective diplomatic interaction. And here I thought you might just be interested in human culture for its own sake," Emma teased. Aziri's scales shifted in the subtle pattern that Emma had learned to recognize as embarrassment. That too, perhaps. A chime sounded throughout the ship, indicating final approach to Earth's orbital diplomatic station. Their moment of reflection was coming to an end. "Captain Lopez," Aziri said, formally straightening her diplomatic attaché uniform, "I wish to express gratitude for your role in creating this opportunity. Without your courage and strategic thinking, the events that led to my current position would not have occurred." Emma smiled, reaching out to adjust the ceremonial drape that denoted Aziri's house affiliation, a gesture that would have been considered shocking familiarity 6 months ago, but now felt natural between them. "And without your warning, I might have been caught unprepared. Let's call it a mutually beneficial alliance." An alliance. Aziri agreed, the word carrying weight beyond its simple meaning. "I find that concept most satisfactory." "As do I, diplomat Cadet Aziri of House Vashlan Third Lineage," Emma replied with formal cadence before breaking into another smile. "Now come on, we've got history to make." Together, they left the observation deck and headed toward the shuttle bay, where Ambassador Kavesh and the Earth delegation waited. Behind them, through the viewport, Earth continued to grow larger, blue and green, and swirled with white, a world of water and life and complex, passionate beings who had found their place among the stars. A world that would now, thanks in part to one moment of courage between two very different individuals, take its full place in the grand assembly of galactic civilizations. One small action had indeed led to consequences beyond imagining, rippling outward like the gravitational waves of colliding neutron stars, forever altering the fabric of space-time itself. As the diplomat and the soldier walked side by side toward their shared future, both understood a truth that transcended species and systems, that the universe is changed not only by grand strategies and massive forces, but by individual choices made in moments that seem small until viewed with the perspective of time. And sometimes those are the most important moments of all. 25 years later, Ambassador Aziri of House Vashlan stood on the ceremonial platform in the Grand Hall of Concord, the massive central chamber of the Galactic Council headquarters. Beside her, Admiral Emma Lopez Vashlan adjusted the formal collar of her dress uniform, an unconscious gesture that made Aziri smile inwardly despite the solemnity of the occasion. "Stop fidgeting," Aziri murmured in their private communication frequency. "The ceremonial recording drones will capture every movement." "After all these years, you still expect me to stand as still as an Ivian during ceremonies?" Emma replied, her lips barely moving. "Some cultural differences persist, my love." Before Aziri could respond, the massive doors at the far end of the hall swept open, and the Assembly Herald announced in 17 simultaneous languages, "The Council recognizes the representatives of Species Designation 4291 petitioning for observer status." A delegation of 7 tall crystalline beings, entered their translucent bodies, refracting the chamber's light in patterns of extraordinary beauty. They moved with fluid grace, despite their seemingly rigid structure, each step creating harmonic resonances that Aziri's sensitive hearing interpreted as something close to music. The Lumidians, Emma whispered unnecessarily. Both women had spent the past 3 standard years preparing for this moment, the introduction of a new spacefaring species to the galactic community. Aziri stepped forward as the designated greeting ambassador, her ceremonial robes flowing around her in the current of carefully controlled air that maintained optimal breathing conditions for all 93 species present in the chamber. On behalf of the United Species of the Galactic Council, she said in the formal tones that carried both authority and welcome, I extend greeting and recognition to the Lumidian confluence. Your journey to join our community honors us all. The foremost Lumidian, identified by subtle variations in its crystalline structure as their prime resonator, inclined its upper portion in the gesture of respect they had established during preliminary contact missions. The confluence receives your greeting with harmonious intention. The being replied its voice, creating overlapping tones that the Council's translation systems rendered into standard speech. We approach the gathered wisdom of many worlds with humility and anticipation. As the formal exchange continued, Emma stood at perfect attention. Her scarred face now lined with the distinguished marks of age and experience, revealing nothing of her thoughts. Yet through their pair bond, Aziri could sense her bondmate's emotions, pride, nostalgia, and a deep satisfaction that transcended words. They had come so far from that first meeting in a sterile sanitation room, 2 cadets from different worlds sharing a dangerous secret. Now they stood as architect guardians of the very system they had once feared might crush them. General Drozier was long gone, his disgrace ultimately leading to comprehensive reforms in military leadership protocols. Commander Vex had risen to become the first Sinori Supreme Commander before retiring to focus on training the next generation of officers. And the tentative alliance between Earth and the Galactic Council had blossomed into one of the most productive partnerships in known space. All from one moment of courage, one decision to reach across the boundaries of species and protocol to protect another being. As Aziri completed the formal greeting, and the Lumidian delegation moved toward their designated observation chamber, she felt Emma's presence beside her, solid, warm, familiar, yet still occasionally surprising, even after 2 decades of shared life. Do you ever think about how different things might have been? Emma asked as they walked together toward the diplomatic reception that would follow the ceremony. If you hadn't warned me that day, Aziri considered the question with her characteristic thoroughness. Occasionally, but such counterfactual explorations have limited utility. What matters is what did happen, not what might have been. Emma laughed softly. Still so practical after all these years, it's one of your most endearing qualities. And you remain stubbornly hypothetical in your thinking processes, Aziri countered affectionately. A most human trait. They paused before entering the reception hall, taking a moment of privacy in the quiet corridor. Emma reached out her fingers, gently tracing the intricate pattern of ceremonial pigmentation that now adorned Aziri's scales, no longer deliberately dulled to avoid attention, but enhanced to display the full heritage and accomplishments of House Vashlan. The strongest branch reaches toward the weakest, Emma said softly, quoting the Ivian proverb that Aziri had attempted to explain during their first meeting. And together they withstand the storm. Aziri completed the saying, adding the portion she had omitted in that first rushed conversation. Their eyes met, one pair human, one pair Ivian, yet both carrying the same light of understanding that transcended biological differences. In that moment, as in countless moments before, they were not ambassador and admiral, not human and Ivian, but simply 2 beings who had chosen, against all odds and expectations, to see beyond the boundaries that divided them. And in so doing, they had helped reshape a galaxy. We should join the reception, Aziri said finally. The Lumidians are particularly interested in meeting representatives of Earth. Your species' rapid integration into the Council has become something of a legendary case study. Lead the way, Ambassador. Emma replied with a formal gesture that was belied by the warm familiarity in her eyes. After all, making first contact is what we do best. Together they entered the reception hall, ready to once again bridge the gap between worlds, just as they had done that first fateful day in the Grand Training Hall, when an Ivian cadet had made the unexpected choice to warn a human stranger about a danger she could not yet see. Small actions, great consequences. The true measure of a civilization. The universe continued its eternal expansion. Stars burned and died. New worlds formed from cosmic dust. And in the grand dance of galaxies, the choices of individuals still mattered. Perhaps in the end, they were all that truly did.